Guys, this is not a drill. I Am Legend 2 has finally found its director. Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan are set to star, and production is just around the corner. To say this is huge would be a massive understatement. So over the next few minutes, let us break everything down, starting with the biggest news. Collider has exclusively reported that the sequel to the cult post-apocalyptic film will be directed by Steven Caple Jr. And this is not just some random insider rumor. One of their journalists actually interviewed the director, who confirmed it himself and shared a few details. If the name Steven Caple Jr. rings a bell, you are not imagining things. He constantly pops up in our videos about Transformers, since he has repeatedly stated he is down to return for a sequel to Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Yeah, he is the one who directed the first installment, which a lot of people felt was a bit of a letdown and still criticized to this day. The franchise hit a roadblock largely because of that flop, but there are some caveats. For one, the studio was constantly meddling, and the executives wanted to fast-track a crossover with the G.I. Joe characters, so they kept pushing to write them into the story. The director went along with it reluctantly, and in one interview, he mentioned he would only come back for a sequel if they let him make it without the crossover franchise. Maybe if he had been given more creative freedom, the Transformers franchise wouldn't be begging Michael Bay to come back right now. But it is what it is. Caple Jr. also has Creed 2 on his resume, which is where he met Michael B. Jordan. While you can't really call that movie a masterpiece, it does bring some sweet nostalgia for Rocky IV and delivers a solid sports drama. So, as a director, Steven Caple is pretty decent, even if he doesn't have the star power of the first film's director, Francis Lawrence. Actually, Francis Lawrence was originally planning to direct the second part himself, and insiders had been confirming that for a long time. But now, his involvement will likely be limited to just consulting. We will find out the reasons behind this decision a bit later, but it is highly likely he chose to focus on Constantine 2, which is also currently in development. The release of I Am Legend 2 probably won't happen until next year, which means right now is the perfect time to re-watch the original movie. Either way, locking in a director is a huge step forward because this usually happens after the core story is approved, meaning the main plot lines are locked and they are currently just tweaking and polishing the script. As a reminder, the screenplay for the second part will be written by Akiva Goldsman, the writer of the original movie. He doesn't really need an introduction, considering his track record includes the first I Am Legend, A Beautiful Mind, and Constantine. So he knows better than anyone how to craft compelling stories with charismatic characters. He also confirmed in an interview that the visual style of the film will draw inspiration from the game The Last of Us, specifically the game, not the television series. That being said, visually speaking, the home box office project is impressive even now, despite all the challenges with the cast. The screenwriter enthusiastically praised the game as an example as soon as he signed the deal to develop the sequel to I Am Legend. He mentioned that he absolutely loved how Naughty Dog portrayed a metropolis completely reclaimed by nature, and he wants to show New York literally swallowed by flora and fauna, especially since the initial announcement teased that the story would pick up 20 or more years after the end of the first part, whereas the desolate, overgrown New York in the original film was set only 3 years in. After 20 years, it could have turned into a literal jungle, which is exactly what the creators want to show us in the sequel. Naturally, Will Smith will be reprising his role. If you're wondering why he is still alive, the studio made it clear right from the start that they are going with the alternate ending. It was only available on the digital release, so a lot of people did not even know it existed. You see, in the theatrical cut, which was the widely released version, everything ended with Robert Neville heroically dying after giving the cure to Anna and her son, hiding them, and sacrificing himself to blow up the infected. The alternate ending, which was originally intended as the only ending and was in the first cut of the movie, was very different because Neville did not die. He freed the infected girl he was testing on, handed her back to the alpha male, and left the city with Anna. This ending showed that the infected actually possess intelligence and are forming social bonds, meaning that they were never the mindless monsters everyone thought they were. This specific turn of events made the movie much more faithful to the original novel. But then, as always, the studio suit stepped in. After hosting a few test screenings of the early cut for focus groups, they realized the happy ending felt way too predictable. It watered down the drama and felt like a blatant sequel setup, so they decided to reshoot the ending. But ironically, it is the alternate cut that is now considered canon. How they plan to explain this to the general audience, most of whom had no idea this ending even existed, is going to be a real challenge. One could assume that since we are getting a major time jump, the writers might not even address it directly. To clear up any confusion, theaters might run a re-release of the correct version of the first part. Considering how iconic and popular the movie is, plenty of fans will definitely show up, and some might even bring their kids. After all, 20 years have passed. The internet is currently debating whether having Smith on board will hurt the project, Ever since that infamous Oscar slap, a lot of studios have been hesitant to work with him. But there is no drama surrounding I Am Legend, and everyone is ready to get the veteran actor back in the saddle. As mentioned, Will Smith will be joined by Michael B. Jordan, who gained serious acting clout this year with an Oscar for Sinners. Originally, rumors suggested he would play Robert Neville's son, who would show up in a human colony, which explained the need for a 20-year time jump. However, recent reports indicate that Jordan is playing a different character entirely, stepping into the role of the leader of a new settlement in Connecticut. And that is where the plot starts coming together, with the screenwriter Akiva Goldsman noting that they will still draw heavily from Richard Matheson's novel. Even though the author never wrote a second novel, the concept of humanity no longer being the dominant species on Earth has not been fully explored, and that is because of that theatrical ending, which completely missed the core theme of the book. I Am Legend is not just a story about one man surviving in New York. While it is definitely a fascinating read, the entire point of the story is in the ending, which recontextualizes the title and flips the whole narrative on its head. The theatrical cut with Robert Neville's heroic sacrifice completely lost that thread. On the other hand, the alternate ending, which is now the canon, brought the film closer to the book, but only slightly, as the infected were still a far cry from their novel counterparts. In the novel, they could talk, lived fully functional lives at night, and even tried to seduce Neville, who, by the way, was quite fond of drinking. Not to mention he was not some genius virologist. But now, judging by the reports coming out, the direction of the second part will be reminiscent of the movie Stakeland. Over 2 decades, the infected will have evolved to build their own society, which might be primitive, but has clear rules and principles. Humanity will find itself in the minority, raising the ultimate question of whether finding a cure is even the right move. If most of the planet consists of nocturnal infected, why would they want to change? The story is still set in and around New York. Connecticut, where Jordan's character is the leader, is only a 2-hour drive from the Big Apple. In the first film, the safe zone Anna and her son were heading to was in Vermont. To put that in perspective, that is also close to New York, with the drive taking around 6 hours. Plus, we have to keep Goldsman's interview in mind, where he expressed his deep admiration for The Last of Us and its depiction of a lush green New York completely reclaimed by nature. So, we can confidently assume the story won't shift to a completely different region, and there is even a narrative justification for that. In the first film, Neville stated that he would not leave the city because it was ground zero where the epidemic began, making it the only place to effectively test a cure. Even if Robert and Anna made it to Vermont, they will likely have to head back. Connecticut happens to be right on the way, which is where they will cross paths with Jordan's character and likely team up, since he almost never plays the bad guy. We will leave the reasons for their return to ground zero to the writer, as it could be anything from a quest for a mass cure to more personal motivations. Regardless, the second part of I Am Legend will continue to flesh out the themes from the book. And who knows, maybe this time we will get the actual ending, where Robert Neville realizes that he is the ultimate nightmare of the New World Order. When it comes to the release date, we can only speculate. With the core production team and main cast announced, pre-production is just around the corner. Even if Akiva Goldsman already has a draft ready, it will take at least 6 months for rewrites, approvals, and polishing, while the director scouts locations and plans out the shoot schedule. Once the studio officially greenlights it, the next step is sorting out the schedules for the entire cast. In a perfect world, cameras could start rolling by the end of next year. If that happens, we will need at least 1 more year for post-production. Since this is billed as a major post-apocalyptic blockbuster, they will need time to work on the visual effects, and the marketing campaign will likely kick off around the same time. So, under ideal circumstances, I Am Legend 2 could arrive by the end of 2028. But things rarely go that smoothly, so we would predict a release around 2030. For now, all we can do is keep an eye out for updates. The cast and crew are definitely about to be flooded with questions, and hopefully someone lets things slip and shares some cool details. Be sure to share your thoughts on the sequel in the comments. Do we really need a second part of I Am Legend, and can it live up to the original film? That is all we have for today. See you in the next video very soon.